Hey everyone, Mitch coming in from the Commander's Core. I just messed up already. It's early. Okay, Mitch coming in from not the Commander's Core studio. One day I will get that right, as I am not back in the studio yet, but I will be at some point. Regardless, spoiler season is here, and overnight, and actually after I recorded the previous episode, a lot more exciting spoilers came out, including some that are just so heavy hitting. They are absolutely crazy. With all that said, let's jump into them. And first up, an absolutely brutal, crazy one that is going to see a good amount of play, I would think. Ripper of Bloodlines. What a name. A huge thank you to MTG Goldfish for the translated version of this card. A 6/5 vampire assassin with flying that costs 6 mana in total, 3 black, black, black. Ward, sacrifice a creature. So first up right there, that's already a good ward cost, being like, hey, yeah, if you target my creature, you're going to have to sacrifice something, give something up. And if you don't have a creature you can't target. Anyways, on top of that, whenever a creature dies, target opponent loses 2 life and you gain 2 life. Okay, so this is basically like Wizards was probably designing the card. They're like, what do players like? Blood Artist, that's a card they like. Let's make a giant Blood Artist. And then other guy over there was Johnson. Johnson goes, hey, you know what would be great on that? Ward, because we love Ward. Yeah, Johnson, we know. You guys all love Ward. Regardless, this is like Blood Artist to the max. Okay, so again, whenever any creature dies, does not have to be your own. Again, unlike Zulaport Cutthroat, that's like, yeah, when your creatures die, drain all opponents. Blood Artist is more like, no, when any creature dies, drain target player. It's more targeted. And this is the most brutal version of that. Again, this is twice as much draining. Again, any creature dying, twice as much draining. And of course, with that, again, that ward that also plays into that. So again, if you're going to target my card, how dare you? How dare you target my very gentle, very nice, okay, it's the Ripper Bloodline. It's not either of those things. Card, when you do that, you gotta sacrifice a creature, and then I'll probably just drain you, or I'll go drain that player over there that's a bigger threat than you. Regardless, yeah, this can take opponents down absolutely no time. It's also a 6/5 flyer, too. Again, that is protected with that ward, so already a big threat. Of course, this is going to see play in aristocrat style strategies. Again, just basically a bigger version of Blood Artist. Also, though, strategies that, you know, there's other strategies that sacrifice creatures for one reason or another. Reanimation strategies, too. I mean, getting this out pretty early could be pretty brutal. But, of course, it could also see tribal, you know, vampire, assassin, whatever, essentially, being able to utilize it. It's a heavy-hitting card. Yeah, it's going to be expensive. It's a mythic. Moving on. Melek, Reforged Researcher. A star weird detective. I always love that creature type, weird. For 3 blue and a red. When its power and toughness are each equal to twice the number of in-source cards in your graveyard. That's crazy. Yeah, this power toughness can be an absurd amount very, 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 very quickly. I mean, there are certain cards that, you know, allow you to mill half your library very quickly. So just do that, then get this out, and all of a sudden this is, I don't know, a 40, 40, 50, 50, whatever it is. It can be quite large quite quickly, being a one-shot KO very easily. On top of that, the first insert source spell you cast each turn costs 2 to cast. Again, keep in mind, each turn, not just your own. That is a massive cost reduction, so it's not going to kind of lend itself more to like spell slinging, but obviously it's going to help you cast multiple spells in a turn, being able to say like, oh, okay, my first one just costs now 1 instead of costing 4. But also, yeah, being able to say, hey, on your turn, and your turn, and your turn, I can cast instants for 3 less, which is absurd. Again, Factor Fiction for a single mana, gotta love that. So of course that adds into its power. Yeah, I mean, I can see this one kind of being like a very interesting, like, big mana spells in a way, instant sorceries on your opponent's turns, playing with a good amount of instants, I would say, but also like some self-mill potentially, and also, yeah, ways to get this through. You use like a Rogue's Passage to get it through on a player, they're probably gone. You might even need, I mean, maybe you could utilize some like damage doubling effects potentially if you really wanted to. You might not need to again. Getting this up to a 20, 30 power creature is quite easy. Maybe some counter spells in there, obviously, so you can protect your graveyard because you don't want opponents dealing with your graveyard with this kind of a commander. Regardless, yeah, this can be a heavy-hitting commander. Not sure exactly kind of like how many... I mean, I guess it does have that cost reduction, so keep that in mind. So with that in mind, yeah, for like Spellslinger decks, this could be beneficial to them as well, helping with that cost reduction. But I mean, when it comes to like them being like, yeah, I'm gonna really play into like, you know, it being a giant heavy hitter, you know, like, I mean, maybe, but like, it's also just a very good card for that cost reduction for those kinds of decks. So yeah, as a commander, as a cost reducer, and a potential huge threat too, a really cool card. Next up, Voja, Jaws of the Conclave, and my apologies, I'm never sure if I'm pronouncing that. Voja, no idea. 5/5, Wolf, Vigilance, Trample, and Ward 3. There's Johnson over there again, being like, hey, Ward, throw that on cards. Yeah, we solved hexproof. Good for you. For 5 mana in total, and Naya. Whenever it attacks, put X counters on each creature you control, X number of elves you control, draw a card for each wolf you control. So this is a very interesting commander that's like, hey, do you want to go elf tribal? Do you want to go wolf tribal? Do you want a combination of both? And yeah, you could just solve that all by doing shapeshifters too if you really want to. Again, changelings, I should say. Not all shapeshifters are changelings, but all changelings are shapeshifters, and every other creature type too. Regardless, being able to get a lot of counters on your creatures is always nice. Of course, you're in 3 colors that can, at least 2 of your colors, that can play really well into getting you more counters, taking advantage of those counters that you're getting on them. But more likely, the more powerful version of this is like, hey, anytime you see draw a card, yeah, that's going to be a powerful thing. Draw a card for each wolf you control is absurd. And again, it doesn't specify non-token, which is perfect because there's a lot of ways to make token wolves. Keep in mind, this is not werewolves, just wolves, but still. Wolf Tribal, you know, specifically for Naya is really cool. I think that's a very, very cool thing. Again, Vigilance, Trample, Ward 3, so it's pretty protected in a way with that ward. Of course, you got ways to pump it. I mean, yeah, if you got some elves in play, it's going to do that. So yeah, you could utilize like Mana Dork elves if you really want to kind of go that way and get a little extra, essentially, of those counters. I mean, I would lean heavier into the wolves, you know, drawing an absurd amount of cards every single time you attack. Keep in mind also, yeah, there's some pretty dirty things that you could do with this one. You are in red. You've got extra combat spells, so cast an extra combat spell. Attack again. Maybe have an untap effect like 2 arms or something like that. Untap all your creatures. You know, tap your Mandoric elves. Attack again. Draw into more extra combat spells. Yeah, you never really thought that you get like a combo Naya attack deck, but here you go. Apparently this is it. Combo, Naya, attack, elves, wolves. What's not to love about that? So yeah, definitely a very interesting commander. Again, plays really well into some synergies with these colors, getting extra counters on things, getting elves, getting shapeshifters, getting wolves. What's not to love about it? Moving on. Got Steam Core Scholar. Thank you, MTG Goldfish, for the translated version. A 2/2 Flying Vigilant. Weird detective. Very weird detective. 4/2 and 8 blue. Enters the battlefield. Draw 2 cards, then discard 2 cards unless you discard an instant card, a sorcery card, or a creature card with flying. Correct me in the comments below on this, but I don't know if this is like the very first time we've ever seen a card that has specifically been like, hey, discard a creature card, but only if it has flying. So like being able to kind of give it that prerequisite, like, hey, yeah, you can get around the discarding too, but only if you're discarding a creature with flying, not just any kind of creature card with flying. So this is a really good ETB. Okay, this is like, hey, 2/2 Flying Vigilance for 3 mana, not all that. I mean, these days not all that great. It's not bad. It's not bad at all. But again, that ETB drawing 2 on a 3 mana creature is massive. I mean, that's like Mold Drifter. I mean, Mold Drifter straight up draws you 2, but it doesn't stay in play if you evoke it, but it's 5 anyways. Being able to essentially draw 2, discard 1, that is huge on an ETB. Blink effect decks will love this. Like, oh my goodness, yeah. Hey, come into play, draw 2. Okay, I'll discard this card that I don't really need. Get in my graveyard. Cool. All right, let's blink and do it again. But yeah, being able to have to discard a instant sorcery or creature with flying. I mean, if you have a flyers deck, there you go. If you've got a deck that's got a good amount of instant sorceries, which if you're running a blink deck, you probably do. Yeah, you're good to go as well. So yeah, a very interesting card and a weird detective. What's not to love about that? Next up, Crime Novelist. Okay, this is one that I think it came out either right after I recorded yesterday, but right when I saw it, I was like, oh, no. Okay, first up, there's no way this should be an uncommon because there's just no way. I'm glad it is because it's going to be more budget friendly. I guess I don't even know if I'm glad about that. I don't know if I really want to see this more out in the wild than I already will. Yeah, it's one of those cards that's like Pitiless Plunder where it's definitely not going to be under $1. I mean, it might start off under $1, but it's definitely not going to end up there anywhere near it. And then it's going to end up being like $11 or something like that at some point, like Pitiless Plunder until it's reprinted. We'll see if they reprint it. A 1/3 Goblin Bard Crime Novelist. I love the name. A for 2 in a red. Whenever you sacrifice an artifact, put a +1 counter on it. If it stopped there, it'd be like, oh, okay, that's a really bad card. And add red. Gosh. Oh, goodness. Okay. if it would have been held up in any kind of a way, okay? If it would have been like, hey, whenever you sacrifice a non-token artifact, or only once each turn. I hate only once each turn. I hate it. I hate it. It might have been necessary on this, because this is just basically, here's the thing. Over the past couple of years, Wizards is like, treasure, 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 treasure. And now it's like, oh, okay, we're going to give you a 3 mana little creature that can become absolutely massive. That's like, hey, your treasures now produce 2 mana. Sure, it's limited to 1 mana of any color you want, an extra red, but who cares? It's basically every single one of your treasures now is 2. Every single one of your other artifacts, like, blood tokens, clue tokens, food tokens, are also giving you mana. But yeah, treasures specifically are like, hey, tap sacrifice for free and make 2 mana instead of 1. And there's already that, like, I can't remember what that dragon is, the really expensive gold something dragon, whatever it is. Tap sacrifice an artifact, or tap sacrifice a treasure, it's 2 instead of 1. Yeah, this is basically that, but lower. I mean, like, yeah, it's better in some circumstances, but still, this is like, hey, by the way, very low to the ground, an absurd boost to your treasures. So yes, if you're running any kind of a deck that has treasures, I'm not going to say auto include, because I don't like that term, but you probably should throw this into your deck, because it's super good. And again, for whatever reason, if you're gonna, again, Wizards, if you were going to give this the add red, then take off the counter thing. It's kind of like Corvold, where it's like, yeah, hey, tap sacrifice, whatever, whenever you sacrifice something, draw a card. Oh, also let's give counters to it, because we want it to be a one-shot KO commander. This did not need that. This does not also need to become a threat for you too. That being said, let's read the flavor text, because it's amazing, actually. But then he peeled off the mask, revealing a sight that made Groja's blood run cold. Brula was actually Vogos in disguise! I love that. Like, it's from a crime novel. Love it. Just such a cute art, too. But yeah, that art is going to terrify me when I see the card come into play. And it's going to be like, oh, okay, you already had like 5 treasures in play. This basically doubles up your treasure mana. Absurd. So yeah, keep that in mind. And also, if you just have an artifact deck, this is going to be good in it too. Moving on, Buried in the Garden. Thank you, Wizards, for printing more enchant lands. This one's a very interesting one. Aura for 4 mana total in Selesnya. Enchant land, when it enters the battlefield, exile target non-land permanent you don't control until it leaves the battlefield. Whatever enchanted land is tapped for mana, its controller adds additional 1 mana of any color. Okay, so these enchant lands are very good in certain decks out there, like my Garth deck, which just wants to get 1 land, an absurd amount of things on it, and then you tap it for an absurd amount of mana, then you untap it, you do it again and again and again, and have, 40 mana in a turn, because that's fun. Everyone enjoys that. And here's the problem with these kinds of cards. I mean, not as necessarily a problem. It's kind of a dilemma in Commander, because if you put this on a land, like I put a Fertile Ground on one of my lands, right? It just makes a land tap for additional mana. An opponent, yeah, I mean, they should destroy your land if they can, right? Because that's a 2-for-1 and really putting you down. But again, there's this Rule 0 kind of thing about destroying lands in Commander, but also making your land into a target. This one's completely fair game, where it's like, hey, okay, I exiled your non-land permanent with this. It's kind of like a little prison. I can't remember what the card's called essentially, but like, basically it's like, hey, this is going to remove your thing and also give me a benefit, and this is on my land. I cannot fault any opponent for destroying my land. Not at all. Maybe with a Fertile Ground, you can be like, hey, come on. Come on. This one especially, no. You cannot fault opponents for being like, yeah, I need to get rid of that. Basically, again, this is Fertile Ground plus, why am I, it's like, I don't know why I can't think of the actual card. It's just like 2 in a white, enters battlefield, exile something. Oblivion Ring? There we go. Basically that. So it's a pretty interesting card. One that, again, is ramp, but also removal. And it fits in an interesting space. I mean, if you have a land that's indestructible, like, what my Garth deck does, I have indestructible lands, then it's going to be harder to deal with, obviously. I mean, your opponents can still remove it, but still, that's a good amount of resources dedicated to just removing an enchantment like that. But we shall see. It's an interesting card, and I like that direction that they're going. Next up, Pyrotechnic Performer. That's some really cool art. A 3/2 Viashino Assassin for 1 in a red. Disguise, which is a newer mechanic, and let's talk about that real quick. Cast it face down for 3 as a 2/2 with Ward 2. Turn it face up anytime for its disguise cost. So basically, down as a 2/2. Flip it up for 1, which is nice. Whenever it or the creature controls turn face up, the creature deals damage equal to its power to each opponent. Eddie is going to have a field day with this card, because Eddie has like face down tribal deck, upside down tribal, I think is what it's called. And yeah, I mean, if you have a deck that's got a lot of morph, a lot of manifest, a lot of whatever all these mechanics are now that do face down thingies, cool, congratulations. This is a great card for those decks, being able to be like, yeah, damage to each opponent. That is a lot of damage that you're putting out. Again, first up, whenever I read that the first time, I was like, oh yeah, damage to something. No. Each opponent. Oh, that's nice. Yeah, being able to just spread out that damage. So when you flip this is just a lightning bolt at each one of your opponent's faces, essentially in total for what, 4 mana? Quite nice. So yeah, keep that in mind. Yeah, it's a pretty specific card, but again, we are getting more kinds of ways to get face down creatures. Again, I already listed, morph, manifest, or I guess mega morph too, whatever, manifest. And then there you got disguise, cloak, which are basically the same thing kind of, but yes, those kinds of effects can be really, really good to say, hey, I got all these face down cards, let's flip them, let's deal some damage and just finish off opponents. Next up, Case of the Stashed Skeleton. This is a new kind of mechanic as well to solve. For 1 and a black, enters the battlefield, you get a 2/1 black skeleton token and suspect it. I suspect that skeleton has done some wrong. It has menace and can't block, which is nice. To solve, you control no suspected skeletons. That's kind of funny. So you solve it by like, I have gotten rid of the skeleton. And then when it's solved, you can pay 1 a black, sacrifice this case, search life for a card, put in your hand, then shuffle, activate on sorcery. So this kind of is a roundabout way to, basically, diabolic tutor. I was gonna say demonic. It's like a diabolic tutor. Again, the total cost of this, when you get to that to solve, is 2 and black, which is diabolic tutor. So essentially, this is a very interesting way to go about tutoring. Now, again, this is a creature that can't block, so you can't just be like, okay, I will hold it back for defense so I can get it taken out so I can actually tutor for something that I want. And it also has menace, so it's harder for your opponents to block. That being said, obviously you can make some deals. If you're like, hey, the board situation right now is crazy, right? That player over there is doing some crazy things. I have a Wrath in this deck. I control my skeleton right now. I need it not to be suspected. So you over there, will you block with some creatures? Again, it has menace. You need 2 creatures to block. Thank you. Let's get this Wrath. Also, if you have like a sacrifice outlet or just any way to deal 1 damage to it, that can do it too. So keep that in mind. But yeah, it's a really interesting way to go about tutoring. I don't think it's for like every kind of a deck, like, Diabolic Tutor might be in, obviously, but it is an interesting one. And again, it's one that you get extra benefits from. Like, you get a 2/1 skeleton that has menace. Cool. You can also swing with that and just start doing some damage with it. Once it gets dealt with, then you can actually go tutor. So it's a very interesting one. Next up, Homicide Investigator, a 2/2 human detective for 1 and a black. Whenever 1 or more non-token creatures you control die, investigate. This ability triggers only once each turn. This is one more so where Wizards is like, yeah, let's put some stops on it. Again, they didn't put the stops on the, new treasure goblin thing, essentially, but they put stops on this one. Again, non-token. Boo. Why? Like, why limit it in that way? Maybe I've got too hard of opinions on certain things, but not on others for some reason. I don't know why, but I do. It's like, I don't know if it needed that, where it's like, oh, okay, yeah, this player over here is clearly making a bunch of tokens. That's the problem, that they're going to be sacrificing tokens. Okay, and getting a clue each turn, that's nice. I mean, there are some things that pair really well with this. There's things like, hey, I think it's a green enchantment. When you sacrifice a clue, you make a 1/1 token. So yeah, that could pair too well with it, I guess, but come on. So basically, this is a way to, again, once each turn, Wizards, being able to make a clue if you're sacrificing or getting, your creatures dealt with, your non-token creatures dealt with, that can be a good amount of value for you. It can, of course, work well in an artifact-based deck. Anyways, moving on. Sharp-Eyed Rookie, a 2/2 human detective with vigilance for 2 mana in green. Whenever a creature enters battlefield under control, if its power is greater than this creature's power or toughness, then or its toughness is greater than its toughness, put a counter on Sharp-Eyed Rookie and investigate. So this one does not have stops to it, right? This one's not like, hey, non-token creatures on the battlefield, or only once each turn. Wizards didn't put stops on this one for some reason, but it doesn't like the aristocrat style decks going crazy. Anyways, except for that very first card we talked about. Anyways, this one's like, hey, you know what? Get some bigger creatures in play. It's kind of like Evolve in a way where it's like, hey, get counters on this, but also on top of that, investigate, which is a good amount of ways to get a good amount of clues in play, which of course you can use to draw, you can use for other effects as well. So this one is pretty interesting, actually, and can become quite a powerful creature pretty quickly in the right strategy. Next up, No Witnesses. I think this last one actually it is. Sorcery for 4 mana in total, 2 white. That mana cost looks very familiar. Wrath of God. Each player controls the most creatures, investigates, then destroy all creatures. So basically, Wrath of God minus the, no regeneration, but no one really plays regeneration creatures, or it's like very, there's not like a regenerate deck out there. There probably is. If you've got a regenerate deck out there, congratulations. But very few creatures out there actually have regenerate that actually see play, so don't really worry about that for the most part. And this is basically just Wrath of God. Also, if you have a token deck, you get a clue, most likely. Again, you might benefit someone else on accident with this, but if you've got a heavy creature-based deck or creature token deck, you're probably going to have the most or tied with the most creatures in play, and therefore, if you want a Wrath, that's also like, hey, you get a token, you get a clue, congratulations, do that. So it is a potential downside, but mostly an upside with this one, so it's a pretty interesting Wrath. But now as this episode is coming to a close, it's time for me to hear from you if I could talk. So in the comments below, let me know what your thoughts are on these spoilers. What is your favorite one of these spoilers? What is your favorite commander that's come out so far? Let me know in the comments below. Can't wait to hear from you. If you are interested in any of these cards from this set so far, I'm going to have a link in the description below with whatever is out there yet. I mean, the ones I talked about yesterday, we talked about today. There's a lot of things going on, and even more things going on, I am sure, so make sure you're staying tuned to this channel for even more exciting quick takes and spoilers coming out. And as always, thanks again, and have a good one. This show and episodes like this one are possible thanks to viewers like you. If you're looking for an easy way to help support this show, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Also, hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss any new episodes. You can also go check out our playmats and other merchandise at thecommandersquarters.com. We also have a ton of brand new t-shirt designs in stock, so make sure you check out those as well. Another easy way to support this show is with our TCG player affiliate links. So whether you're buying a deck or individual cards, you can use this general link right here or one in the description. And the final way that you can support this show is by supporting us directly by becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, and I truly couldn't do this without all of their support.